Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Canary Room. Before we start and get into the episode, huge thanks to everyone who's donated to the channel and huge thanks to everyone who's subscribed to the channel. So we've hit over 11,000 subscribers now, so if you haven't already, hit the like, hit the subscribe button please. I never thought we'd get anywhere near this number. Those of you who've made a donation, thank you. It makes a huge difference. The Canary Room is not about profit, it's about fun. And any contributions that you make are reinvested back into making the shows. So whether that's paying for petrol to go on long journeys to film far-flung places of the UK, or buying equipment, use the money to buy the drone, and hopefully everybody benefits from that. So if you are able to, on the homepage of our YouTube channel, there's a link there. Those of you who have very kindly done that, well, it's the usual names: Rob Elkin, Mike Burling, Martin Gentles, and Mario Sec. Mario, huge thank you for your very, very generous donation. So if you're able to, hit the donate button. On today's show, well, we are in the room again, twice on the run. Gosh, what's happening? Today is all about Fife Canaries show training. We will, of course, catch up with the Norwich in the Norwich notebook. We'll have a look at a couple of the native birds. The bullfinches are starting to take a bit of colour on them, but predominantly we'll be focused on show training. We'll have a little look at some of the new colours as well. So all of your favourite features. There is no to-do list and there is no question time this time round. So the to-do list essentially is show training. So as always, mine's on the floor. Oh, grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and enjoy the show. So I remember thinking, when it comes to training show canaries, being a little bit confused by the idea of it, to be honest with you. And I've got a method which I've developed over a number of years now. I mentioned in the last episode that I don't start show training too early. And the reason for that is I want the birds to finish the molt, really, because I've got a finite amount of time and I want to be able to really put the effort onto the birds that I want to think have got a fighting chance of making the show team. In the next episode of the Canary Room, we'll look at the show team and we'll look at the things that I'm looking for in show birds and how I make those selections. But back to training, I don't really spend a great deal of time training the birds before September, and the reason that I don't do that is, as I've mentioned, a finite amount of time. Don't want to stress them, but also there is in the main in my stud a natural steadiness in the birds. Now that steadiness is bred over a number of years, so that's sort of my approach to it. The first thing starts with hanging a training cage, and a training cage is simply an old show cage. It's hanging a training cage on the front of a cage. Now, you can buy wire hooks. I've made them. I've made some wire hooks. I got some garden steel and just twisted it round and made a hook, and does the job. The show cage itself is not particularly heavy. And then what you want to do is incentivize the birds to kind of run into the cage, just to get them used to it. That doesn't simulate show training really, though. It's just about familiarity with the cage. And one of the things that I will do is I'll pop treats in the cage so that they associate it with nice things. There's a piece of apple in there, there's a piece of broccoli in there, or maybe there's some watercress hanging down, and the birds will have that association. It becomes a place that they're really comfortable to be in. When it comes to evaluating birds, though, for the show bench, I only evaluate them in a show cage. You can look at a bird in a stock cage, and at the moment I've got the stock cages, as you can see here, in the kind of breeding condition, so they're singled off. So these are 16 by 10 by 12 deep. I've got 2 birds in each cage. In some instances I've just got 1 bird in. And that gives them, enough room to kind of move around, to hop from perch to perch, but it also calms and settles them down as well, which I think is important. Evaluating a bird in a stock cage is really very difficult because it's, in a natural surrounding, it's relaxed. That's not necessarily how it's going to perform on the show bench. So the evaluation of the show team is very much done in the show cages. What I will do is I'll run a number of birds into the show cages. I'll run one in, and then just out of shot, and we'll have a look at it in a minute, I've got some staging, which is about eye height. And I'll pop the birds on that staging, and I'll have a really good look at them. I'll scrutinise them. I will pick the cages up, and I'll move the cages round. So I'll simulate what I would do as a judge. There's no point in having a bird that, is steady in the cage, and then as soon as the cage is picked up, goes to pieces. And that's what we want to really focus on with the show cage training. Now, some birds can look like an absolute disaster in the stock cage. And actually, when you put them in a training cage, they look incredible. We've got a variegated white hen that we bred last year. Now, we have a little look at this bird now. I've just pulled that bird from the flight. You can see the steadiness which is there. There was no show season last year. I did do a little bit of show training with her, but there is real steadiness there in that bird. The importance of the white I'll get to in a minute, but before I do, the other thing that I'll do in the show season is on the stock cages, I'll put top hat drinkers in addition to the small water fountains, and that's to encourage the birds to pop through and find water, because one of the biggest challenges that we have on a show bench is the birds finding water. Now, when they're on the staging, as we'll see in a minute, I will put water on the cages. To start with, I'll put conditioned seed through, so they get used to bobbing their heads through to picking those things up. So let's put a couple of birds up there now, and we'll have a little chat as to why there's a white up there as well. You can see the three birds are behind me. We've got a clear yellow hen here, which I think is a sweet little bird. We've got the variegated white in the middle, an allied, which I say is a last year's bird. Never got the chance to show it, but certainly retain it for next year. And we've got what is a heavily variegated buff hen here at the end. Now, there's a couple of things to point out when it comes to the show training. You can see in a couple of the cages I've got some white string hanging from the top, and what I do with this is it's there to stimulate a degree of interest, and the birds will reach up and they'll look to peck at it, and I want them to get up on their legs. I want them to show themselves, and so that's part of the development. I've alluded to it a couple of times. The reason that I've got a white there, now ideally it would be a pure white bird rather than a variegated white, is that many birds, many certainly canaries, but it's not just canaries, it's the same with the redpolls as well, will react really nervously when they see a white bird. And what you don't want to do is be in a case where, your best show bird is up on the show bench and all of a sudden a white comes next to it and, the bird itself just gets absolutely distraught, because that will ruin its chances of being successful. When you think about a show, what happens is the birds are taken from the staging, they're taken and put on the judges' table. Sometimes they're returned to the staging, sometimes they're kept to one side, so they need to be able to find the water, that's important. But they also need to be comfortable in being moved around the shed and moved around the room and being handled. I'm at the beginning of starting. If I pick this bird up here, you can see that it's relatively steady. It's certainly not jumped to the top of the bars, so it's relatively steady. If I pop it back, it retains a degree of steadiness. Now, frankly, I was quite gentle with it then. I don't expect stewards to be as gentle with it, and when I'm training, I will pick a bird up, I'll move it around, I'll sort of swing it to an extent in my hands just to try and simulate what goes on in the show itself. A really good exhibition bird will be spoilt if it's not trained properly. So show training itself is really, really important. So really, for me, the key tips on it are, yes, by all means, hang cages on the front of your, hang training cages on the front of your cages. Make sure they can find the water. That's critical. Make sure you handle the cages, move them around, look at them, study the birds in them, move them, look over the top, move them around. Almost over-exaggerate the movements so that the birds are used to it. The show season is not far away. The first show, I think, for me is at the beginning of October. And then, from there on in, there'll be a show pretty much every weekend, right the way through till late November, early December. So we will follow them throughout the course of the season. I hope that's helped. As I say, I'm fortunate in that over years I've bred a steadiness into the birds, so I don't spend months and months and months show training them. They're already largely, naturally steady. What I do want to spend time on is making sure that they find the water. We've had a little look at the Fifes, we've had a little look at show training the Fifes. Let's catch up with the Native Diaries. Relatively quiet couple of weeks in the Native Diaries. We mentioned last time that we were feeding a variety of different sort of wild foods, but also shop bought foods for the birds. We can see the redpolls enjoying picking on an ear of sweet corn, and they'll absolutely strip this bare, which is, it's part of that enriching the environment, also looking after their health. They seem to really, really enjoy that. The bullies managed to find a patch of ripe rowan berries. I'm not feeding them too often, but we can see that the young bullies are starting to take on a bit of colour. So it would seem that we have 2 cockbirds and 2 henbirds from the 4 that we bred, which is a nice even split. What that means is, we'll be running with a number of pairs of bullies next year. I've got a little bit of work to do because look to maybe swap out one of the cockbirds or bring another cockbird in, because I don't want to do a brother to sister pairing. But more of our plans, I guess, in future episodes. But the bullies, pleased so far with how they're going. The older birds have looking a little bit sharper now after looking quite ragged through the molt. So they're looking quite nice. The siskins, and thanks for everyone who got in touch about the siskin last time out. Really appreciate that. Siskins are looking good. They are, molting out nicely again. I think that the 2 young that I've got left now, I think, are a cock and a hen, which is good. So not sure what to do about the siskins next year yet. I've got some thoughts, but what I thought we'd do is have a little look at one of this year's redpolls. Now, this year's redpoll is a cinnamon. Came as a nice surprise, cinnamon, and I believe, given the sex linkage, that it is going to be a hen, which is good because I can sex it. The rest are quite difficult to sex, so we'll have a little look at this cinnamon hen. It is split for pied, but it's beautiful little thing. I think the cinnamon redpoll is a very, very sweet bird, and who knows, it may stay for next year. With the rest of the Fifes, we are really just looking to get them through the molt. The Fife hens seem to have enjoyed their time in the flight cage. I put baths on regularly. Fortunately, although I regret saying this, no casualties through the molt, which is great. I've been giving them quartered Savoy cabbage, just to peck over, just to have a little look over. That seems to have kept them interested. Do them the world of good. I don't overgive greens to the birds because I think it can cause loose droppings and the like. So, but I do like to give it as just a little bit of boost. Bit of broccoli every now and again, little bit of cut up apple as well. They enjoy it all, and I think that's really important from a sort of good bath, good fresh seed, nice bit of greens, plenty of room to fly. What's not to like about that? Some of the other fifes in the room, well, I've pulled out a couple of buff cocks that I really like the look of, a couple of light buff cocks that I really like the look of. It could form part of my plans for keeping next year. I sort of have two plans really, a sort of show team plan and then a keeping plan. The two aren't the same, but we'll talk more about that in the next episode. So that's the rest of the fifes in the room. That's we'll jump now to the Norwich. Not a huge amount to catch up on the Norwich, but enough to chat through. As with the fifes in the room, the Norwich very much is just keeping them going. I'm giving them egg food. They've got decent colour on them, so I've cut the egg food and the colouring agent down to sort of 3 times a week now. I'm not giving it every day. I don't think they need it every day. Not sure that I've quite got the colour on them that I'd want to, but I'm okay with that. I'm not gonna worry about that. I've enough colour in them to be able to help me sex them, which I think is going to be important as we move forward. Looking forward to seeing what additions I can bring in with the Norwich, but I think I've got a nice foundation of birds, and what we will do is have a little look at one of the Norwich in a little bit more detail in a second. I think this bird, we saw it early on, I think this bird is going to be a buff cock. It's bred out of the yellow cock that I got off Keith, and I think I think it's just a nice bird. I'm by no means an expert with Norwich Canaries, so what I think and what some of the experts who watch the show who keep Norwich think maybe two different things, but I think I can see a good Norwich, and that's really important when we're thinking about birds. It's about knowing what the standard is and having an understanding of the standard, and that comes through studying, and it comes through experience, and it comes through exposing yourself to good birds and looking at those good birds, whether that be on the show bench, or I've been very, very fortunate to be able to go and see Keith, or going into one of the top fanciers sort of rooms and seeing their birds there. But whatever variety of canary, or for that matter native finch or budgerigar, or whatever variety of bird you keep, what's really important is you understand what good looks like. And for me, the pictorial models are okay, but they are very much one-dimensional. So actually seeing a bird, and I'd say to any fanciers now, you're thinking about taking up the hobby, get to as many shows as you can, go and see the birds that are doing well, see the birds that are winning, and try and fix that in your eye, in your mind and in your eye. And it takes time to get your eye in, because naturally, if you think about some of the modern day border fancies who've moved into fifes, their eyes are very much orientated around borders, so they're looking for an accentuated leg in a fife. Well, that's not what a fife is about. A fife is a different bird. So similarly for me with the Norwich, I like to see a bit of leg on birds, because I like to see a bit of leg on the fife. The Norwich doesn't want too much leg on show, but it wants some leg on show. So if you look at the model, it does show some leg. So I've got to make sure that I don't look at a Norwich through a fife's eye. And similarly, if you have that challenge, the first importance is recognising it. Do I know what the model is? Do I understand what the model is? As we have a little look at this bird now, as I say, for my relatively untrained eye, I think there's a lot to like about it. It's certainly staying. All the birds I've bred this year in the Norwich are likely to stay, depending on what the ratio is of cocks and hens. If I have too many cock birds, then I will let a couple go. But certainly any hens bred in the shed will stay. They're used to my environment, they're used to my feeding regime, and hopefully that will stand us in great stead for next time out. So that's our Norwich notebook this week. It's time now to have a quick check-in with the new colours. I think the many fanciers will know at this time of year, it's sort of, you're in the room on a daily basis, and you're kind of looking at things, and you're looking to see how things are changing. And the new colours aren't in the room at the moment. They're in a separate room, just molting out. And I think the grey wings in particular, the agats are really nice this year. The agats that are bred are nice. I can see that, and they've taken the colour really well. And the grey wings, this is one of the older birds, not finished yet, but it's early September, so I don't anticipate it should have done. But it's taken the colour quite nicely. Visually, it looks like a cockbird. I'm pretty sure it is a cockbird, to be honest. But it's taken the colour nicely, and that's the important thing with the new colours. I've had quite a lot of interest in the agats, the grey wings, and the yellow mosaics. I think probably just going to keep the grey wings for next year. But more on that, maybe next time out. So that is a very brief trip to New Colour Corner this time out. Well, it's all we've got time for today. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you have, give us a thumbs up, give us a like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, hit the subscribe button. It's free to subscribe to the channel, and you'll get notifications when new shows come out. Next time out, we will be looking at the selection of the show team and the approach that I take when looking at the show team, and we'll look at some of the birds whose fortunes we will follow throughout the show team right here in the Canary Room. More on the roads are planned. If you can, hit the donate button on the homepage. That helps cover the costs for the on-the-road trips. It's much, much appreciated. Until next time, take care.